So thank you so much. Happy Earth Day to everybody who is out there watching. It is my great pleasure here to be sitting and have a little conversation for Earth Day with my daughter, Gwen, and my friend and neighbor and constituent, Dieter Gruen, who has had such an interesting life. It's been my honor to nominate him for the Presidential Medal of Freedom, but came out of Nazi Germany, worked on the Manhattan Project, played a role at the Argonne National Lab in developing the nuclear navy, and now is working on solar patents, among a whole lot of other things. And just thought it would be an interesting opportunity to chat about. I'm tempted to say 3 generations. Don't take this wrong, Dieter. We might be 4 generations if we take the age gap between us. But to have a chance between sort of the, all of the energy and activism of Gwen's generation and, and all that you've seen over your life and mine, and just be a good chance for a conversation. So, Gwen, the floor is yours to run our little conversation here.
All right. Well, thank you for having me.
Hi,
I'm so
Gwen.
honored to be here with Dr. Gruen.
Glad to see you.
Hi. Yeah, you too. So my first question is to both Dr. Gruen and my dad. So Dr. Gruen, you can start. What was the climate conversation like when you were my age? Was it something that was even talked about? And if it was, how was it talked about?
We only talked about the weather being good or bad, not providing any thread to our continued existence on planet Earth. We did not talk at all. No one was talking about the climate change being a global warming trend that would become so bad that we could not continue living on this planet. We never talked about it.
Yeah, it's crazy how that's changed so much now. So same question for my dad, obviously, little later, but how was it when you were?
So I was thinking, like, I mean, as you know, Gwen, my dad, your grandpa, has been focused on climate change for a long time, and that was my life growing up. So we talked about it a lot. I was born in 1971. The Environmental Protection Agency was created in 1970 by Richard Nixon, who you may not think of Richard Nixon as being an environmentalist, but he created the Environmental Protection Agency. And so it was in the sort of the zeitgeist of me being a kid, of people still talked about all the pollution and smog in cities, the Cuyahoga River catching fire. This predates my time, but there was this awareness of pollution, but more local pollution. There was a lot of talk about acid rain. There was, talk, I remember, about the ozone hole and how we were all going to, get skin cancer if we didn't close it. And there was a lot of really positive things that happened to do that. We entered into, not only did we pass environmental protection rules, we put catalytic converters on cars. We put regulations that power plants had to get rid of soot, and the air got cleaner. Smog went away. The ozone hole started to close. Trees in New England got healthier. And there was a sense I had as a kid that climate change was going to be the next thing that we would fix. And what's really been, I think, the most saddest, depressing, frustrating thing about my adult life is that what was a totally nonpartisan issue became totally partisan. And we're having the same conversations today that people had in the 1970s about climate change being this horrible crisis we have to deal with, us not having a lot of time to deal with it. But if we move quickly, it can be profitable and beneficial. And I believe all those things to be true. And it's maddening to me that we were having almost the same conversations 50 years ago.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I hope that we reach a point where everybody just agrees that it's a problem. All right, so next question. This is also to you both. So maybe Dad, you can start this time. When did you realize, you kind of touched on this, but when did you realize that combating climate change was going to be part of your life's work and mission?
Oh, I mean, this is going to be too personal, but you know, when you're at the dinner table with Tom Kasten, my dad, it was all of the dinner table conversation growing up. So I always felt like I wanted to do something about this because it was just the thing we always talked about. I didn't know how. I think when I was in college, I was really intrigued by maybe we can find some ways to deal with, you know, composting and getting rid of, you know, rod and methane emissions, and then thought I'd get into transportation fuels. And of course, life takes interesting turns. But I always assumed I'd be doing something about climate change, as you know, as long as I can remember, just from dinner table conversations growing up. That's just because we have such a weird family, though, Gwen.
Yeah. All right. So same question for you, Dr. Gruen. When did you decide that combating the climate crisis was going to be your mission?
I guess I became most acutely aware, not just of climate, but of the more general subject of energy, the importance of energy in our daily lives in the around 1973, when what people call the first oil shock occurred. There were long lines at the filling stations. Cars couldn't get gasoline because there was an embargo that Saudi Arabia and the OPEC countries had put on the sale of petroleum to the United States. And at that point, people began to talk very seriously about alternative energy sources and about conserving energy. And that was really the time when I first became aware of the link between burning of fossil fuels and climate change, because when we burn coal and gas and gasoline or natural gas, we're creating carbon dioxide. That's a molecule that enters the atmosphere. Of course, it's a very important constituent of the atmosphere because plants use carbon dioxide as part of the process of making our food. And we eat the food, and when we breathe in oxygen, and when we breathe out carbon dioxide. But burning fossil fuels creates so much carbon dioxide that it acts as a greenhouse gas. And I'm sure that in your studies in high school and maybe even before, you've seen graphs, you've seen these curves that show the relationship between the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and the average temperature that is very closely related to the concentration of carbon dioxide. And that is responsible. Many people believe, I believe, that today the chief measure of where we are on that scale of carbon dioxide concentration and temperature is rising essentially linearly with the amount of carbon dioxide. And that is directly related to how much we're putting into the atmosphere. Can I ask you a question, Gwen? All right.
Sure.
Every year, approximately, how much carbon dioxide, let's say in terms of tons, how many tons of carbon dioxide do we emit, do we put into the atmosphere?
I know it's a lot.
Well, it's about 30 or 40 billion tons.
It's crazy. Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
And, you know, when you ask someone like me, why is that warming the atmosphere? Why is it getting warmer? Now, when we say warmer, in terms of degrees, it's not that much. But we live in a very, very well balanced environment. And even a small rise in the average temperature, just 1 degree, is a great deal. Between 1880 and 1980, that's 100 years, the average global temperature went up half a degree, from 56.5 to 57 in that 100 years span. From 1880 to 2020, that's 40 years, the temperature has gone up 1 degree. And so in the next 40 years, when you will achieve your adulthood and you will have a family and children, and you will be talking to your children, in those 40 years, from 1980 to 2020, it has gone up another degree. And by the time you become a mature adult, if we don't stop burning fossil fuels, it will go up another degree. Now, a lot of people will say, oh, well, 1 degree, 2 degrees, what does it matter? But it matters a great deal. And it will become irreversible. That is to say, this process, at some point, we won't have, if we stop burning all fossil fuels, at some point, it doesn't matter whether we burn or we don't burn, we can no longer control it because it will have become irreversible. It will just continue increasing.
So I can kind of pivot now to something more to my generation. So I run like an empowerment club at my school. I'm really passionate about getting other people involved. So I would love to know this personally too, but what advice do either of you really have for, kids and young adults to be combating this crisis? Because we all know that we can't just have adults doing it. We can't just have kids doing it. Everybody has to do it. So especially since, the younger generation is so motivated to help, maybe Dad, you can start. What's your advice?
So I think and this is just a really cool event, because I think that as Dr. Gruen pointed out, your generation is going to pay the price if we don't act. And you have a tremendous power to speak that truth in ways that people have to listen. It's why Greta Thunberg is so powerful, because she can acknowledge that people like Dieter and I, we'll be dead and gone before the worst comes, but you won't be, and you can speak from that moral authority. At the same time, you have tremendous wisdom, like from Dr. Gruen, people who have thought through this. In your 98 years, Dieter, you've learned a few things more than somebody could learn in 16 years on this earth. and to make sure that as you know, as your friends express their activism, that they couple that demand for urgency with with the humility and respect for the folks who have worked on this problem before, and make sure that expertise is factored in. And I think the example that I always give is when Greta Thunberg came to testify before Congress, and she dropped the IPCC report on the desk and said, "This is my testimony. You should read it and stop talking." And it was this amazingly powerful message to both say this is important and it matters, and at the same time say the work has been done. The experts have told you what you have to do. I am not here because I'm an expert. I'm in here because I'm demanding action.
Yeah, for sure. Dr. Gruen, do you have any other advice for my generation?
Well, your father mentioned Greta Thunberg. You could be the American Greta Thunberg. Think about it. If you would like to gather a few of your friends and you want to get together with me, you want to talk to me, you have any technical questions, that's my expertise, that you want answered. If you would like to ever have another Zoom with your friends, or have a meeting of some kind, maybe a regular get together where a group of us could talk about these issues. Sometimes ideas emerge when we talk together that we never thought of. They just come up.
I agree. I think education is like such a crucial part that I think some people forget about in activism work. You know, they just kind of get all excited about it and they do it, but they forget to really learn about the topic first. So it's great advice. All right, I have another question for you, Dr. Gruen. If you could change one policy right now and see it enacted, what would it be?
Well, I think that President Biden is very conscious of the importance of the environment and climate change. In the big bill that he is trying to pass, there are provisions for funding for alternative energy. That's a very, very important thing. We have to be able to create energy without burning fossil fuels. And that is an exceedingly difficult thing to do because of the amount of energy that we use. That, I think, is the key to everything. We need to stop burning fossil fuels. That's easily said, but very, very difficult to do because all of us are totally dependent on using very large amounts of energy. And so where are we going to get it from? That's going to be the key.
So Gwen, I think we have time for about one more question if you've got one, not least because I'm looking at the floor and I have to run and vote here in a moment. What else is on your mind?
I have a good one for the end. So today's Earth Day, which is purpose of this video. So what is one thing that you would recommend for someone to do that they could do today that would help to stop the climate crisis?
Well, I think I've just said it. We have to stop burning fossil fuels. And I think people have to recognize that this is our home. Planet Earth is our home. There is no planet B. We cannot go anywhere else, and we don't want to go anywhere else. We must keep this place fit for us to live in and for other animals and for other plants. We must find a way. It's not going to be easy. That's why people say it's the biggest challenge we face. I believe it is the biggest challenge we face. We cannot go to Mars. We cannot go to Venus. The sun is our star. It's a star. Everyone has to recognize that the sun gives us enough energy in 1 hour to last all 7 billion of us for a year. And we have to learn to use it efficiently and economically. And we can do that, but it's going to take all of us working together to do it.
So I would say, Gwen, that a part of the challenge of climate change is it's so huge that it can be intimidating, that you don't know where to start. And it's also so huge that while every one of us has a role to play, from turning off the lights when we leave the room to buying more efficient light bulbs if we can do that, or thinking about what sorts of products we buy and what's our footprint. But the reality is that if all you do is the things that affect your individual life, it's too small. And so I think the most impactful thing that all of us can do is figure out how to use those networks we're in to encourage other people to action. I have a job where I can influence a lot of people, and that gives me a certain power to influence people to action. Not everybody has a job where they can influence a lot of people, but you have your empowerment club at your high school, and you can influence a lot of people through that. For some of the people watching, maybe it's your church, maybe it's your Boy Scout troop. We all are part of social networks, and maybe it's the business you run. Maybe you can change the way that your business purchases things. But if you think about how do I find ways to act, and how do I act in ways that will induce a lot of people to act with me, that's how we get through this together. And we should take encouragement from the fact that, as I said at the start, what people said 50 years ago at the first Earth Day was, we have this huge opportunity to live in a cleaner world with cheaper energy, with a better quality of life, where we can live longer. Who wouldn't want that? But it takes all of us rowing in the same direction. So take your own actions, and then dare other people to follow you.
I want to say one more thing. I am very encouraged by the conversation we had this afternoon, because it's an example of people thinking about this topic and finding solutions, and we'll get through it together. We'll find it together.
Yeah, we will. Yeah.
Dieter, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for doing this. Gwen, I'll be home tomorrow night, and we'll catch up then. Thank you for doing this, and happy Earth Day, everybody.
It was a pleasure for me. I enjoyed it.
Same here.
Gwen, do you have any final words of wisdom for us?
Just that this was a super cool event. Dieter, is honored to meet you and listen to you. And it's definitely inspiring me to really just do everything that I can. So I hope it inspires everyone else too.
Thanks, Gwen.
I hope we can talk again.
Yeah, me too.
Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Okay.